Mr. Hill is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Madam Secretary, welcome to the committee. We're glad to have you today, and appreciate the ranking member's comments about, a shutdown in HUD, but we actually have a shutdown in housing in Little Rock, and I want to talk about that right now. We were faced with a housing failure in my city because of the collapse of the Little Rock Public Housing Authority. And first, let me enter into the record, Mr. Chairman, only 22 pages, HUD's Quality Assurance Division report, which came out in September 2020.
Without objection.
In this report, HUD details the financial laxity and malfeasance that has been allowed to fester in the Little Rock Public Housing Authority. HUD's report describes lapses in unit inspections going back to 2017, unauthorized transfers of funds to unknown accounts, deceased citizens continuing to receive housing vouchers, $700,000 under the CARES Act unaccounted for, and the Housing Authority's inability to produce an audited financial statement since 2019. I could go on. While this is alarming, it's not new. The Little Rock Public Housing Authority's problems date back to before 2016 when HUD labeled it as troubled. Inspector General reports and corrective action agreements between HUD and the Housing Authority were purported to have fixed these problems. But because of the pandemic, Madam Secretary, HUD never sent anyone to check whether these changes were actually implemented for 3 years. Now we're back to square one and even worse off than before. So no one's blaming the Department of Housing and Urban Development for the pandemic, and nobody's blaming HUD per se for the Little Rock Public Housing Authority's gross financial mismanagement, but HUD does bear responsibility, Madam Secretary, for failing to perform your compliance obligations and compelling the Housing Authority to take meaningful corrective action. So public housing authorities play a critical role in providing our neighbors, nearly 8,000 of my neighbors, with those particularly in need with housing, and so it's a big issue. Metro Housing Alliance negligence and HUD's lack of oversight means my constituents may not know if they'll have a roof over their head, and leaves my district with a housing authority teetering on insolvency. May I ask you for your personal commitment that HUD will take responsibility for this catastrophic situation and commit to resolving these long-standing issues at the Little Rock Public Housing Authority?
Without question. And let me say to you, I agree. When I entered HUD, we had not had an inspection in 2.5 years. Not under my watch. 2.5 years. I was the one who mandated, directed that they go and start to do inspections because I knew that there would be problems that we did not know about.
Let me ask you.
So I support it 100%.
Thank you. Well, it's important, and we need that. And I'll say that across the board, every member of Congress on both sides of the aisle has been frustrated with government agencies, regardless of who the president is, not doing their job during the pandemic, despite unlimited resources being provided to those agencies. So I'm not making a political comment, I'm making a government bureaucracy comment that we just didn't let our people travel or do their jobs during the pandemic for far too long. The situation in Little Rock is just one symptom of the larger plague that's infected our public housing across the country. In my view, HUD has serious problems here, and in my time in Congress, we've yet to see concrete improvements from either Republican or Democratic leadership. I want to submit to the record, Mr. Chairman, an additional report. This is the HUD 2020 IG report that found that, please.
Without objection.
Yeah. This report found that HUD field operations staff had not been referring troubled PHAs to the department for action or submitting reports to Congress for 11 years, Madam Secretary. 11 years. And at that time, HUD was required by law to make this determination for 18 failing public housing authorities, but failed to do so. The IG reported that HUD staff never made a referral of any kind. So considering the abysmal state of public housing across the country, I find it hard to believe that HUD has not been making these determinations, and by definition then, assuming that all public housing authorities are in good shape. So Secretary Fudge, let's go from Little Rock to the bigger picture. How many public housing agencies have been troubled for 2 years or more that you're aware of? So across the country, how many public housing agencies are been in trouble for more than 2 years or more?
I have no idea off the top of my head, but I will say that 2020 report is a report that I received when I entered HUD.
Yeah.
We have now reduced our IG directions by 1,000. There were thousands of them when I came in. We have cleared 1,000. And
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
The others.
This is a big issue. It's important to this committee to have oversight of our public housing, and I yield back to the chair.
The gentleman from California, Mr. Sherman, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Welcome.